So thank you everyone for joining us today. Even though we're not on campus, today is Bucks for Bucks Day, a day of caring. I hope that you have been able to, or will be later today, take part in some act of caring, kindness, or volunteering. Today I went shopping for my elderly later and neighbor and motor-lawn. As part of Bucks for Buck Day, a day of caring, James Tenaglia, class of 2012, is going to share with us his real-world financial advice. James was a facilities major while he was at MMA. He is now a financial advisor for Tenaglia Gardner Wealth Management Services. He is here today to share his knowledge, and I know I'm thankful for that. So we'll not take any more time and turn it over to Mr. Tenaglia.
Thanks, Bo. So yeah, I was a facilities grad. I got out in 2011, and I went and worked for Siemens for a number of years. I was a project engineer. We built power plants all around the world. I lived in Peru, Mexico, Argentina, Germany, Turkey, the Philippines. Made stops all across the U.S. After about 5 years doing that, they wanted me to go to Egypt for about 5 years. I wasn't super interested in doing that. So at that time, I left Siemens and I joined my dad's practice at UBS. For those of you who aren't familiar with UBS, we're the world's largest manager of private wealth, about $3 trillion. 50% of the world's billionaires do their business with us. More people with 100 million, more people with 10 million, more people with a million. We help them manage their money on a daily, monthly, weekly, yearly basis. So I'm just here to share some of the knowledge I've learned, coming from a similar background as many of you and getting out, almost a decade ago at this point. Please stop me if you have any questions. I've done a number of these, and there's nothing worse than me talking for an hour at you guys. It's the last thing that you guys need. If you have a question, please stop me. Feel free to ask. Feel free to jump in. There's not a ton of us. Looks like there's 13 of us. So, try to keep it light. Try to keep it, conversation and ask away. Can everybody see the presentation? Good. Go to the next slide. So this is the first kind of advice I give to everybody. As tempting as it is, you guys are probably in as bad of shape as a graduating class. And I don't mean that individually. I mean that as an economy. You guys are probably going to struggle more than previous years to get a job. I was very fortunate when I graduated. There was tons of opportunities. But I can tell you from firsthand experience, a ton of my classmates, the first thing they did was go buy that Denali, go buy that F-350. I had a buddy buy a Range Rover. When I worked at Siemens with a guy, when I worked at Siemens, I was on the road 11 months out of the year. A guy I worked with bought a Porsche, and it sat in his grandma's barn for 11 months out of the year. Not a very wise decision. Cars are typically not very good investments, expensive. So I always start all my presentations with this. You don't need that brand new car, especially if you're going to be on a ship for 6 months. Obviously, you need a safe, reliable vehicle to get places, but you don't need a $75,000 truck right out of school. It's typically not a good move. The last couple of years, I did a presentation called "How to Build Your Credit." So I built some of that in here so that you guys didn't miss out on that. Where credit is probably, one of the most important things that part of your financial life. It's really, it's how you get a mortgage. It's how you pay your student loans. It's how you live day to day on a credit card, car loans in the future. Basically, every factor of your life will be tied to credit and credit scores. And the earlier you can start that process, the better. Those of you who are getting ready to graduate, get that student card if you haven't already. Put a pizza on it, put a tank of gas on it. You don't want to go crazy. You don't want to carry a balance, but you want to have a card. I have very good credit. I've, worked over a decade to have a really good credit score at this point. The number one still weak point on my credit report is length of credit, right? I'm only 29, so I've only had credit for 11 years. That's typically my weakest point whenever I get an application. So start to do it now. It seems scary clicking that button, but you who are graduating in a few months, you're literally going to need it. You know, you can't always put a flight or a hotel on your debit card. When I first got my job with Siemens, my credit card had a $300 limit on it. My parents had to buy my first flight to go to Siemens because before you're in the system, you don't get your corporate Amex and you can't buy flights. It's kind of an awkward conversation with your boss. Hey, my mom had to buy my flight. How does she get paid back? So start building that credit now. What is your credit score? I won't go too deep into this. There's a number of different systems. Banks pull it when they want to see, do you pay your bills on time? How much credit do you already have? Are you overextended? You'll see later on in the presentation something I call a debt thermometer. The more debt you have, that can scare lenders away from you. So it's just something you always want to be mindful of. Credit scores, I don't think I've actually ever seen one in the 300s. Typically, if you're below 550, it's really bad. You really, people talk about getting a perfect credit score, and it's really not that important. Really, once you get above 760, you're going to get the same rates on everything as if you had a perfect 850. So don't freak out if you don't have a perfect 800. You guys have zero credit history at this point, so your scores likely will be in the 5s or 6s. Don't feel bad about that. But you just need to start taking those right steps of, hey, I'm going to have student loans. Most of you probably have student loans that you're going to have to start paying back. That starts pretty quick after graduation, unless you go right into, your master's. So start to look at these things and go, oh, my private student loans, I'm going to start owing $500 a month. I got to start paying those back. All that counts towards your credit score. So how do you improve it? Always pay your bills on time. You don't want to close out credit cards. So be very careful with what you select. It may be, I'll give you an example. When I worked for Siemens, I got a top of the line $500 a year Delta Travel Amex. It was great. I was in the airport every 2 weeks. I got free lounge access, free drinks, free food, free flights. It was great until I stopped traveling. Now I'm not using $500 a year worth of benefits, but I still have to pay for that credit card. You can change it in other Amexes and whatnot, but you just be mindful of the cards that you're taking out. You don't want to close them. You want to get a card that you can get for free in most instances if you're not going to have it forever, basically. Pay it off. If you're not going to use it, my student credit card is still open to this date. It's cut up. I don't even have it anymore, but I could still call up Chase right now and get my new student credit card back if I really wanted to. It's important for that length of history. That is my oldest item on my credit report is my student credit card. So again, if you don't have one, go get one now. And don't spend more than you can afford on it. That's the biggest mistake is Amex keeps sending me increases every 6 months. Amex goes, hey, guess what? We're going to raise your balance to $30,000 now. I don't need to spend $30,000 on a card in a single month. It's ridiculous, but they try to get you to do it. They keep sending you, as long as you're paying your bills, you're on time, they want you to pay interest. Here's that debt thermometer. When you guys actually go to get a mortgage, this is probably where this is the most important. There's certain income limits or debt to income limits based on certain type of mortgages, FHA mortgages, regular conventional mortgages. Typically, they don't want you above 36% debt to total income. So you guys are probably a ways away from getting a mortgage, but just know if you get a car loan, if you have student loans, if you have credit card debt, all that stuff counts towards this. And if you want to buy a house in a couple of years, you may not be able to buy as much of a house if you have other debt outstanding. The biggest thing I can give you guys for advice is live within your means. Again, some of you are going to graduate and make over $100,000 your first year, and you've probably never even dreamt of what that actually looks like. And it's amazing when you see that direct deposit hit, more than you make in your internship in a 2-week paycheck. But it goes very fast. Saving for a house, paying off loans, putting money in your 401k, health insurance, that money disappears very, very quickly. And the older you get, the more life happens. You want to get married, you want to have a kid, you want to buy a rental property, you want to drive a nicer car later on in life, what have you. It all gets expensive. I'm about to have my first baby in July. Now all of a sudden I've got to think, great, college is going to cost $300,000. What do I need to put away every single month? There's going to be an endless supply of things to save money on. Live within your means. Stay at home with mom and dad until you pay off your student loans. Get an apartment with the buddies. You don't need a palatial estate, at 22, 23 years old. Just be smart about it, and don't spend more to look cool. You'll regret it later on. I can promise you that. Probably this is, if I had to pick one of the most important slides of all, this is it. What's going on in the world right now? Coronavirus, right? There's people who never thought in a million years that they would lose their job. 36 million people lost their jobs basically in a 3-week span. If you are overextended, you bought a big house, you're driving a Denali, you're sending your kids to private school, you got bills to pay, what happens when the paycheck starts coming in? You always want to have an emergency fund of, hey, if I do get laid off, it's probably going to take me 6 months to find a job that's going to pay me the same. There's unemployment. Typically, unemployment is not going to cover what you were making. It is for right now, for 40% of people, they're actually making more on unemployment. This is kind of a one-time deal. So you really need to have that emergency fund. What happens if the transmission in your car blows? What happens? I had to put a roof on my house last week. That cost a lot of money. You don't want to put that on a credit card. It's tough to pay that stuff off over time on a credit card. You want to be able to pay cash for that and build back up your emergency fund. So again, this is, probably the most important thing you guys can do and remember throughout your life. What happens if your car breaks down in the middle of nowhere? You want to have access to money somehow, and not necessarily on a credit card. Cash in a checking account that you can get money access to. 40% of Americans could not come up with $1,000 if they had to. And I know that sounds like a ton of money to college kids. I remember my last semester, senior year, I think I had probably $200 to my name. And I would have killed for $1,000. I can tell you in the real world, $1,000 does not go very far. When your water heater goes, or, you guys have cars, you know what car repairs are like, but house repairs are 10 times that. So just, if you have to take one thing away, make sure you build up an emergency fund. Any questions so far? Am I going too fast, too slow? I'm good?
No questions that I see yet.
So next thing I put on here is retirement savings. This again, I would probably put at number 2, right behind your emergency fund. Start on day one. When you guys do find your job, and if it takes you a while, don't get discouraged. It may not be the job that you want. Trust me, things will turn around at some point, and it's a lot easier to get a job when you have a job. So even right now, if you don't find your ideal job right out of school, don't take it personally. Your education was still worth it. I can promise you that. But day one of whatever job you take, start saving for retirement. I can't tell you, in my business, we work with a lot of business owners. And with that comes, we run 401k plans for companies. Business owners are typically very good at saving money throughout their lives. But when we go into these companies and meet with the employees, I can't tell you how sad it is when I sit with somebody who's 62 years old and says, hey, I'm 62. I want to retire when I'm 65. I have no money saved for retirement. What should I do? I said, well, you should like this job because you're going to be here for the next 25 years. You need to start early, start day one. Put 10% of your salary into your 401k day one. Don't even think about it. You'll never miss it. I can promise you that. This is important when you're evaluating job offers as well. It's not just that salary. You know, everybody gets caught up on, well, my base salary is going to be 65 at GE and Siemens was only 64, but the match was way better than the 401k and the health insurance was way cheaper and the dental insurance was way cheaper. You gotta put a value on all those things. That's not always the highest dollar offer that you can get. Benefits, you know, I'll share with you guys. I'm on my wife's health insurance. She works for a hospital. The hospital pays $22,000 a year for our health insurance. She could go make more money at another hospital, but she's not getting as good of health insurance maybe somewhere else. So you got to look at those benefits in their entirety, you know, and the different options. And so I put in here Roth 401k. Fortunately for a lot of you, you guys may get maxed out on income limits for what you can put into a Roth IRA, but on a Roth 401k, there is no income limits. I personally like to split mine 50-50. Does anybody know the difference between a Roth and a traditional? We want to take a stab at it? Nobody?
Doesn't it have to do with the taxes?
Yeah, exactly. So in a traditional, the money comes out pre-tax, and in a Roth, the money goes in post-tax. And what's the benefit of both? So if you're in a higher income tax bracket, say you're, you know, you make it, you're the chief, you're making 400 grand a year, you're in one of the highest tax brackets. You probably want to put in all of your money pre-tax to lower that tax bill. The government is basically lending you your tax dollars to invest until you go into retirement. The Roth, when you guys are younger and not making as much money, goes in post-tax, but comes out tax-free. So it spends the next 50 years growing tax-free, comes out tax-free. You know, the big question is, what are tax rates going to be in the future? The odds are likely higher. You know, the feds and the stimulus bills that we've just got have added trillions of dollars in debt. Somebody's going to have to pay for that over the next 50 years. It's going to be you and I through our tax dollars. So it's important to have money in different buckets, we'll call them: traditional, Roth, IRA, 401k, all, you know, kind of all over the place, and spread it out. You're spreading out your risk with taxes by doing so. Compounding interest. It's probably hard to read, but the gist of this chart is basically start early. If you guys start at 22, you can actually stop saving a lot earlier. Not that I recommend stop saving, but by starting at 22, you're going to be way better off than somebody who, if you start at 22 and go to 62, you're going to be way better off than somebody who starts at 32 and goes to 72 because of compounding interest. Einstein actually called it the eighth wonder of the world. Your money starts making you money, and the longer it's in there, the more interest your money makes for you. So that goes with the day one, start putting money in your 401k, start investing, the sooner the better. What to invest in? You know, likely what you guys will, your first investments will be in your 401k, which will most likely be in mutual funds. Does anybody know what a mutual fund is? Bueller, anybody? No? Okay. So a mutual fund is basically a basket. When you take, when you hear the index, the S&P 500 index, what does that mean? It's 500 companies, literally, and they put it in. What's that make up of? The biggest ones are Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Google. You're investing in shares. If you look at a share of Amazon today, it's $2,500 almost. Most of you aren't going to put $2,500 of your paycheck away every single week. You can't physically. So basically you're buying a tiny little sliver, a tiny little piece of each share in a mutual fund. You're pooling it with all your coworkers. There's other apps to get you guys started. Robinhood is a good way to get started. It has its own issues, but for young people, it's a good way to start. Vanguard, Fidelity, all have great platforms to get you guys going as you start to make money. But mutual funds will probably be where you guys start. There are risks investing in individual companies and stocks and bonds, but most likely you will start in a mutual fund. Here's the answer to that. So we'll just kind of skip over that. And this goes back to what I was saying of different priorities. As you guys are coming out of, as students, your net worths are actually negative in majority of your cases. Sometimes you might even be $100,000 or $200,000 in the hole. But that's fine. You have the next 50, 60, 70 years to get out of that and start building wealth. And it's different. If everybody lived their way to make the best money decisions, everybody would probably be miserable. It's not always about the almighty dollar, although you can claim it is, but you have to be happy to a certain degree. If all of us wanted to be as wealthy as we could, nobody would ever have kids. We would probably live in a van down by the river. You wouldn't waste money on a house. You wouldn't waste money on a nice car. You wouldn't go out to restaurants. I like to go out to eat. That's one of the things I spend money on. I enjoy it. Is it a wise financial decision? No. Could I spend way less money and save more money? Sure. But those are the choices you have to make. And it's not about putting every nickel away and saying, hey, I maxed out my 401k this year, but I racked up $15,000 in debt on a credit card. It doesn't work that way. You shouldn't be going into debt to invest money. But you shouldn't only be living off credit cards and not saving anything. You have to find that healthy balance. We call it pay yourself first. If you take it out of your paycheck and put it in your 401k and live off what's left, I don't really, everybody talks about make your coffee at home, bring your lunch, don't go out to eat. That's fine. Those are great ways to save money. I don't really care. Do all those things as long as you save money first. If you want to spend money on shoes or clothes or dirt bikes or whatever, as long as you're saving money first, I don't care what you spend your money on. That's what's going to make you happy. Word of advice I always give to people: don't get carried away with company stock. A lot of you guys will work for companies where you'll get stock options. You'll have access to employee stock purchase programs. A lot of them will either let you buy company stock at discounts, or the last, Siemens and UBS, where I both work, for every 3 shares of company stock I bought, they gave me 1 for free after 3 years. Pretty good deal, as long as the stock doesn't go down 33%. I have a chart on there of Enron stock. Does anybody know? You guys might be a little young for Enron. Does anybody know the story of Enron? Want to take a stab at it? No? Enron was basically, we'll call them a power trading company, gas, electricity, and their stock essentially was a fraud. It was propped up. There was phony financial documents. Employees were putting all of their net worth in these stocks. They were buying power plants, and you'd have those guys who literally invest their life savings into a stock that went to zero. A tale I'll give you, I have a client who worked at GE, was doing his retirement financial plan, and he had about $900,000 worth of GE stock when it was at 40. GE stock is worth $6 today. He has a lot less money because he didn't sell some of it. You have concentration risk. You don't want to, I thought I was going to work at Siemens forever. Turns out it was only 5 years. You don't want to get carried away with company stock. It's not a bad thing to own. You should want to work for a company and that you support and you think will be there for a long time. But you just don't want to get too much of it. We touched on it earlier, total benefits package. Again, super, super important, especially in a job market like this, where companies may try to squeeze you guys for maybe a lower salary, but fight for the benefits. Fight for better health insurance, better life insurance. Do I have disability insurance? Disability insurance is probably one of the most important things, especially as a younger person. You can have what happens if you get into an accident and you don't die? What happens if you're on a ship and you become paralyzed? You can't work anymore. You didn't die, so you didn't get a big chunk of money. Your family doesn't get a big chunk of money from life insurance. Who pays your bills? Who's going to take care of you? Disability insurance is very, very important and a benefit that you guys want to look at. Are you getting stock options? A lot of companies are doing student loan forgiveness as a benefit. For every year, they might give you $5,000 towards your student loans. What's the 401k match? What's the vesting schedule? Is there a profit sharing? It's not just the almighty, what's my paycheck going to be? There's lots of other benefits. One thing is to always try to give back. I get a lot out of doing these. I try to do these, 5 years, Michelle, maybe something like that. Coming up on that, I've done a number of classes, with some of you might have had Katie McClellan. I've gone into her class. I've gone into other professors' class. It's not just about giving money. It's giving time. Join your local boards when you guys finally settle down somewhere. There's a lot, I'm on a committee for the town of Barnstable. We get to decide basically where millions of dollars of taxpayer money go every year. I had no clue about this. Last night we were deciding on if we pay debt service on a golf course so that we get to own it as recreation. Be involved in your community, and it'll go a long way to help you guys. And you track your net worth. Everybody likes to talk about how much they make, or nobody likes to talk about how much they make, but it's always, what are you making? How much? It's great. I have surgeons who make $900,000 a year who don't save a nickel. They spend every single penny. I have guys who were linemen at Eversource who have net worths in the multiple 8 figures because they live like a homeless person. At the end of the day, it's net worth. It's not what you earn. It's what you keep. So keep that in mind, when you're going to buy your Denali truck. Just a, quick list: live within your means, max out your retirement savings, start investing early, value the benefits, do the cost analysis of everything, and track your net worth. Put a couple resources in here. Probably the most important one for you guys, and I would write down, is credible.com. As you get out, student loans are going to consume your life. Look at them, do your homework, and find out, are these federal loans that if I want to become a teacher or a nurse and they can become forgiven? Are these private loans that are going to be here forever? Learn the difference. If you log into Navient, those are likely federal loans that are potentially forgiven. But if your student loans are with Citizens Bank, those are not. Do the homework. Find out, when you do, when you start to have to pay them back, what your interest rates are. Interest rates are super low right now. I was with somebody today who her son's student loans were like 9.75% with a private lender. And they've got a rate at 4%, refinancing. So really do some homework on your student loans, look at refinancing, but look at what benefits you lose. If you're going to refinance a federal loan, you may be losing out on some benefits. Like right now, if you have federal student loans, you don't actually have to pay them till November. There's no interest accruing until November. It's actually a good opportunity to pay off loans faster that you don't have to. So just SoFi is another good one to look at your student loans. Morningstar is just a website for you guys to look at when you start investing. You're going to get a booklet of your 401k with a whole bunch of mutual funds, and you guys are going to glaze over it and say, I have no idea what any of this means. If you plug the little ticker into Morningstar, it'll give you some information. Credit Karma, you guys can get a free credit report every single year. Pull it, make sure there's nothing bad on there. Make sure nobody's stolen your credit. I was very nervous when literally the first week I started my job at Siemens. I flew down to Orlando to our headquarters. Somebody smashed the window in my rental car and stole my passport, my checkbook, my social security card, and my birth certificate because HR needed all copies to get visas for me. I thought for sure my identity was going to be stolen. Fortunately, it was not, but there's always a possibility of that. So you just want to always make sure that everything on your credit report is good. And if you do see a discrepancy, make sure you report it and get it fixed so that you're not, adversely affected. And that's basically it. Open it up to questions, comments, concerns, anything you want to go back on. I know I went through kind of quick, but I want to leave time for questions. Does anybody have a job already? Any job offers in the house?
I had one. I accepted it, but unfortunately for the coronavirus, they told me not to move down there. So.
Hold on, and that was Ryan?
Yes.
What company was that with?
That was for the Marriott.
Cool. Where were you gonna go?
Orlando, Florida.
Very cool. Which property?
It was the Grand Vista in right by SeaWorld there.
Yep. Very cool. Very cool. I'm sure they will reopen at some point.
And they love Mass Maritime Cadets. So.
They do. Any other job offers from anybody?
Yeah, I took mine down at PSEG. I know Lieutenant McClellan spoke to you a couple months ago.
Oh, okay, that was you. All right.
Yes, it was.
Yep, there you go. And I thought I saw a chat. Suffolk Construction. What are you going to be doing for them, Caitlin?
I'm going to be a safety officer. I'm either going to be on the South Station project or the Winthrop Square project.
Cool. Safety officer is a huge role. The sites I was on, we'd have often thousands of workers on it. The site I was on in Argentina, we had 6,000 workers. Safety becomes a huge issue. Fortunately, you'll be in Boston, which is, takes a very serious union workers. But the last thing you guys want is somebody to die on your job site. So I wish you luck. That's exciting.
Thank you. Someone actually almost died on my internship. He was nearly crushed by a bunch of a pile of scaffolding, and I was right next to him, and that was really scary. So
it's scary. I had a guy get electrocuted. It's terrifying when you're in a leadership or management role and somebody does something that could potentially get themselves killed. It is terrifying. So, always be on your toes.
Maybe a good question or a good topic to hit on is when you say to have that 6 to 9 months, how fast should they be able to put that together and kind of what are the early days that they should be looking at?
Yeah, so the hard part is, where do I start, right? What's day one look like? And honestly, I think day one, my recommendation would be, if you have the opportunity, if your parents are willing, stay at home for 6 months or a year. Figure out if this is the job you like, if this is where you're going to be. Figure out what your student loans are going to be before you buy a new car or, go rent an apartment. Find out what that cash flow is going to be like. When you're first starting out, right, and you don't own a car, you don't own a house, you don't have rent to pay, your emergency fund doesn't need to be all that big, because you really don't have that many expenses. Just kind of fact of the matter. As you start to get older and you have more responsibilities, I now have 3 cars and a house and a wife who's pregnant, and my emergency fund's as big as it's ever been, because or it was as of last week, before I needed to put a roof on. You don't know. So, to answer that, try to get it to that 6 to 9 months as soon as possible. And again, if you need to get out of mom and dad's house right away, if there's issues there, get out of mom and dad's house, but be mindful. Maybe you try to find a place with a roommate that affords you to put that $200, $300, $400, $500 a month away until you can get to that comfortable emergency fund. Look for a high yield money market, through your bank, or a short term treasury, or something like that.
Do you have a budgeting tool you suggest to them? I know that's always a question that's asked.
Look through, whoever you guys bank with. Almost every single bank now tracks where you spend money. A lot of times in your user agreement with banks now, it says, do you want to opt in for the software? I personally, the way I track it is, I put everything I can on my credit card and I pay it off every single month. American Express gives me a very nice detailed statement every single month of where I've spent money. As far as a budgeting tool, there's apps you can use like Mint, and there's a whole slew of them. I'm more in the camp of, like I said earlier, as long as you're saving money first, if you put that $500 a month into your emergency fund, and you put 10% of your salary into your 401k first, spend it however you want. If you want to drive a nice car but live in a dump, fine. If you want to live in a nice house but drive a dumpy car, fine. You want to go out to eat, great. Everybody's a little bit different. I think you have to balance that happiness. But as long as you're saving money first and spending money second, not the other way around. Most people budget and spend money first and save what's left. If you do it vice versa, there's always going to be money saved. And every single month, I can tell you, you can find an excuse to spend that money if it's sitting in your checking account. It's very, very easy to do. Matthew, any relation to former Admiral Elmer?
Yeah, he was actually my grandfather.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you, any relation? Are you Mikey T's big bro?
I am Mikey T's big bro.
Oh, no way. Yeah, we played football together at Pope John Paul.
Okay, yeah. I'm sorry to hear about your grandpa's passing. He lived like right up the road from me.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, right on Turn Lane. Beautiful lake.
Yeah.
How are your parents and everything doing?
Everybody's good. Everybody's good. My brother is he graduated in December finally. For every I got out early and he spent 3 extra semesters, but
right, all the balance.
all balances out at Camp Maritime.
Right.
So he is currently with you guys in the job hunt, trying to find that spot. He's working for his friend right now, but trying to find. Oh, go ahead.
Is he with Connor Hines?
Yeah, he's working with Connor, and I think Shane just started working there. And
yeah, I heard he's going to BU now.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he got into the undergrad.
Good.
But yeah, I'm glad everything's going well for him, that he finally got out, and then he can join me in looking for a job.
Join the competition.
Oh yeah.
Right. I don't know. Does anybody else have any other questions? If not, we can turn it over to Bo. And then if you have questions you just don't want to be recorded, I'll turn the recording off.
All right, so like Michelle said, I just want to say thank you so much to Mr. Tenaglia for coming to speak with us today. It was really interesting. I learned a lot tonight, especially not buying the most expensive vehicle on the lot. Might not be the best decision at this point, but the second most expensive might work out. It's a lot to think about, and I know I'm ready to start thinking about it finally to make the correct choices and my financial choices. On another note, the event scheduled for next Wednesday has been canceled. Michelle is working to find another person to present the same topic or a different one. As soon as she has any information, she will share it with us. And then Michelle will also be sending out these recordings once she finishes editing them. So if you miss something and want to get back and watch it again, it will be shared with us. If you have any questions regarding the presentation tonight but didn't feel like asking them, please reach out to Mr. Tenaglia as he will answer any questions. I know some of you probably aren't as comfortable asking this way. But again, I just want to say thank you all for coming out tonight.
I just put my email in the chat for you guys. Michelle has it too if you can't get it from there or don't save or whatever. But